Hi everyone, this is just a quick review of what your classroom management notebook is going to be like. Your classroom management notebook is a summative assessment of the management strategies and philosophies that we've talked about all semester in class. You'll notice that many of the components of this classroom management notebook are directly connected to the theory to practice activities that we did in class. So you'll want to collect all those theory to practice activities and make sure that you look over your notes and any lectures or movies that we saw that day. It all goes together to help you create sort of this plan. So this classroom management notebook is your philosophy. It's your time to make a plan for your class. It's time for you to show me that you understand how to apply all of those strategies and theories that we talked about in class this semester. So remember, you're going to first pick what grade level you want your management notebook to reflect. So you can choose K1, 2, 3, or 4, 5. It doesn't have to be the class that you're in now or even a class that you've been in before. It could just be a class that you want to teach in the future, maybe for student teaching. Just choose one grade level because the notebook that you create for K1 would be very different than the notebook you would create for 4, 5. So make sure you identify what development level you want to have your classroom management notebook reflect. Now, a little bit about the formatting. This is not one of those projects where you're going to be incredibly creative. It is a format and it's supposed to be a professional looking document. When you go to get a job, your principal may ask you about your management plan, and it would be a great time for you to have this printed out in a notebook and hand it to them so that they could look it over. So you want to make sure that the categories for each of these components are completed as bold headings and that you have page breaks in between. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what's going to be in your classroom management notebook. The first part is going to be your philosophy of classroom management. This is about a page in length, and I want you to really think about your philosophy about teaching and learning and managing students. Some of the things you might want to include are your teaching style, your personality, your temperament, your personal likes and dislikes, sense of humor, patience, etc. Like I say in class, my philosophy is sort of organized chaos. So you have to think about what you're comfortable with, and I want you to give me a really good detailed description of what your philosophy is at this time. So rules, consequences, and incentives. You're going to create 3 to 5 comprehensive rules for your classroom. Remember that theory to practice that we did where we talked about what are rules and what are routines. So you want to make sure that you go back and make sure that these are 3 to 5 rules for your classroom and that they're comprehensive, and that means that they're sort of all-encompassing. Instead of saying listen to others, keep your hands to yourself, you might say respect your neighbors. So again, you want to go back to that theory to practice and make sure that you look it over. You're going to develop 3 to 5 logical consequences for not adhering to these rules. Remember, rules have consequences, but we don't use punitive, humiliating, or negative consequences. So in this class, we've talked a lot about logical consequences. You've done some readings and some viewings about logical consequences. You are going to create some logical consequences for not adhering to these rules. Remember, the goal is that you're trying to get students back on track. You're not trying to punish them or humiliate them. You're trying to get their behavior back on track. So one way you might do this is to create a chart. So you'll have your rules, logical consequence, and then you're going to tell me what are your incentives. It might be that you have 2 different kinds of incentives, which we talk about in class, your internal or external incentives. So that's a good idea to give me a chart there. Next are routines and procedures. Remember, we talked about how these are the backbone of the success for your classroom. I want you to give me details about what students will do coming in first thing in the morning, what will they do when they want a drink of water, use the restroom, leave the classroom for specials or lunch, and dismissal to go home. Remember again that this classroom management notebook should show a consistent philosophy all the way through. So if you tell me in your philosophy statement that you're about shared power or you're about student-centered discipline, then you want to make sure that that kind of philosophy is reflected here in your routines and procedures. That means that students may have water on their desk, that they can get a drink of water when they're thirsty. There might be morning activities for them to do rather than sitting down and doing a morning worksheet. So think about those options and make sure that it's aligned with your philosophy. The fourth component is a community of learners. You're going to describe specific strategies and activities that you'll use to create a positive learning community in your classroom, and then to sustain that positive learning community. So make sure that you give me 2 different kinds of activities. What are you going to create a learning community with, and then how will you sustain that? Number 5 are sponge activities, and these are those kind of quick games and time fillers that you'll use in classrooms whenever you have like a lull, you're waiting for the PE teacher to come pick them up, or you're waiting for them to call you to go down to late lunch, whatever it is. You're going to include 5 of these activities. Make sure that you give me the title, and then I want in your own words, don't cut and paste it please, I want in your own words sort of how you do this activity. The next component is 20 management strategies. There's 10 that are preventative, which are those proactive strategies we talked about at the beginning of the semester. And then there are 10 response strategies that we've talked about towards the end of the semester. So 10, what do you do before misbehavior happens? And 10, how do you respond to misbehavior? Make sure that you give me the professional vocabulary, the terminology for each, and that you give me a brief description for each. Okay, so number 7 is how do you plan to prevent and respond to one of the following hot buttons? And we talk about this in class when we talk about responding to misbehavior. Just choose one of these, and I want you to discuss how you're going to prevent it and then how you'll respond to it if it happens. Tattling, disrespect to the teacher or other students, refusal to do schoolwork or participate in activities. And we've gone over this in class. Remember, it needs to be aligned with your philosophy. If your philosophy is about a shared power and students are tattling, then you sending them to the office is not aligned with your philosophy. So think about the response you would have aligned with your philosophy. I also want you to include an illustration of your ideal classroom setup. This is not going to be hand-drawn. You will do this on the computer. You can do this through Office or drawing, or Scholastic has a website that you can create a classroom on. So just Google classroom setup design and you'll see lots and lots of options. You're going to explain your choices, and remember, one of the first activities we did in this class was to read a chapter about how to organize your classroom. So make sure you go back to that theory to practice and that chapter to see what the best options are. And again, this should be aligned with your philosophy. Make sure that you use the details and professional vocabulary from the text. Okay, then the last component are 3 useful resources that you can use for helpful information in classroom management. And then I want you to make sure you include a brief reflection on each resource in your notebook. So you may use our textbook or Harry Wong videos, or it could be something that your classroom teacher gave you or something that you found online. Whatever it is, I want you to cite those 3 resources using APA reference style, and I want you to give me just a couple of sentences about how that site was helpful to you. So that will be your entire notebook. Now make sure that your notebook looks professional, okay? Here are some hints for you to get the full points for it. Make sure that you are showing me everything that you learned this semester. This notebook is not about you making things up or finding new ideas. This is a summative assessment about, do you know how to use the ideas you learned in class this semester? Make sure that your notebook is developmentally appropriate for the grade that you chose. You have a consistent philosophy of classroom management. The entire notebook looks professional, is ready to be shown to a prospective employer. It's complete. You've handed it in on time, which means you've submitted it to As You Learn on time. And then your mechanics are good. And then finally, I've given you some places to start here with really great resources. Okay, so that is the review of your Classroom Management Notebook, and we'll go over any questions you have in class.